store for you. I didn't even know that would rhyme so well, but that's great. We are living in times of great change and disruption. It's a tremendous amount of angst and maybe even anxiety over the kind of things that are changing all around us. Technology being a great driver of the changes, of course, but there are lots of changes happening in lots of ways. And how you manage those things, both as a person, for yourself primarily, and in your role in your world of work as a leader, or in any role really in life, I think is really fundamentally so important. How we manage stress, how do we leverage stress, how do we leverage uncertainty as a catalyst for our own growth. And to that end, we've got somebody that's just an absolutely amazing leader in this space, thought leader and author, and I'm going to read her formal bio in just a second to kick things off. But I think you're going to have an absolutely amazing experience today. Feel free to use the chat for comments that you wish to share, or if you're answering questions, Dr. Ross is going to be asking some things, and you can feel free to use the chat for that. And if you've got questions that you'd like to pose to Dr. Ross, then you can put those in the Q&A, and we're going to monitor the Q&A and then save some time at the end for that to happen. End to end, this is going to be less than 50 minutes, so you'll have a break between now and maybe the next thing that you might have scheduled. I mean, we all do have so much going on in our lives. We understand that fully. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just share a little bit more about Carolyn Ross, MD, MPH, CEDS. She's got a lot of letters after her name. She spent a lot of time earning those letters. So she is a physician, a speaker, and a consultant on addictions, eating disorders, trauma, and intergenerational trauma. She is board certified in preventative medicine and in addictive medicine. Dr. Ross is the founder of Inclusive Minds Consulting, a group that trains organizations on creating trauma-informed, inclusive, and equitable workplaces. She is also a team member at WORKWELL Labs, a training and consulting firm that equips organizations with the strategic resources to create healthier and more engaged workplaces of well-being. I am so happy personally to be able to introduce Dr. Carolyn Ross. Carolyn, take it away.
How about that reveal, Adam? Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here to talk about this important topic, how to manage stress and anxiety and still have peak performance in uncertain times. So let's get started. Picture this. It's a Monday and the office vibe is really down. Jonathan, who you see pictured here, is a valued employee, but he's been hearing a lot of rumors of company restructuring, which he thinks is company speak for someone's getting fired. Jonathan gets a familiar tightness in his stomach and he feels his jaw clenching. That feeling? That's workplace stress. The World Health Organization has said that stress is the global health epidemic of the 21st century. Employee well-being is at an all-time low of 34%. And according to Gallup poll, 23% of workers around the world are actively engaged, which is good. But that means that 77% are not. Of these 77%, 15% are actively disengaged. They're actively opposing their employer. We know that well-being is a crucial driver of engagement, and higher engagement usually means higher profitability. What if, when you look at the picture of Jonathan, instead of a stressed out Jonathan, you could imagine a world where stress doesn't steal your joy? Okay, so these are the most common workplace stressors. And I want to just illustrate each one to you by telling a little story. So, as I said, stress is at an all-time high because of factors at work and also factors in society. I feel like this is a much higher level of stress than we normally have. It's like the stress Olympics. So let me tell you the little story I want to go with. And for each one, just notice the common workplace stressors that correspond to the story. Have you ever woken up and before you even turn over in bed, you start scrolling on your phone. Have, I feel guilty to admit that I have. This revs you up to worrying to a new high, and that's even before you've gotten out of bed. It's true, we're living in uncertain times, and uncertainty significantly impacts mental health. Think of this scenario now as you look at these workplace stressors. You get to work and you see your desk is covered with all the work that you need to fit into your day. You start feeling a lot of dread that your 8 hour day will stretch to 12 hours. You have too much work to do. As your manager lays another project on your desk, you try to ask for some extra help because you feel like you're drowning. Well, you're not alone. 29% of employees have identified a lack of support as a cause of stress at work. The third most common cause of workplace stress is violence, threats, and bullying. And these cause stress by straining relationships, eroding trust and morale, and in extreme cases can make people worry about their physical and psychological safety. Now, while you're struggling not to reach for one of the candy bars in your secret junk drawer, you find yourself having to address bullying complaints by one of your direct reports. And you can hear screaming coming from the executive director's office, which sets everyone's teeth on edge. So the toxic workplace is coming. While you'd like more help at work, anybody got a secretary to spare? You would also like to stop trying to jump through hoops, trying to make your salary stretch to fit even the cost of a dozen eggs. Beyond that are those rumors of corporate layoffs that your friend Jonathan told you about. You have a feeling of helplessness when you take a break and check out the news on your phone, seeing international wars and climate-related disasters. While on break, you call your mom and you find out that she's in the hospital in another state. Personal stressors like this can really tip you over when you're already stressed. And then finally, you find out that you have a 4 hour training on a new computer system that you have to go to today. And this techno stress is described as a psychological condition triggered by the inability to adapt to or cope with modern technology. And it can manifest in anxiety, tension, or distress when you feel overwhelmed by technology. All told, you had one of the many stressful days at work, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. So, what can you do? That's what we'll be talking about next. So, when you face challenges, your body goes into fight, flight, or freeze states. And you can see from this chart that the adrenal gland that sits on top of your kidney puts out adrenaline. And if stress continues, it also puts out cortisol. When stress is prolonged and severe, cortisol, which was meant to reduce levels of adrenaline, can cause wear and tear on the body. Now, we've been talking about stress and anxiety, but they're not the same. Stress is usually caused by an external trigger. Something outside of you that happens will cause you stress. And the trigger can be short term, like a work deadline or an argument with your partner, or it can last longer, like being laid off work or having a chronic illness. Anxiety, on the other hand, is defined by persistent, excessive worries that don't go away, even in the absence of a stressor. Now, you may get the same emotions and the same symptoms, but different causes. So let's go more into this, we're talking about here. You can see here that the statistics show that 65% of US workers said their mental health challenges interfered with their ability to work. And the most common of these is depression and anxiety. But lately, more workers are experiencing severe, complex issues like eating related problems, substance use disorders, and even suicidal thoughts. The pandemic has also had a lingering effect on all of our mental health. Many employees are navigating the collective trauma from the pandemic and at the same time still coping with work stress and personal lives that have been forever changed. I have a patient whose wife was never able to return to work because of COVID long haul. Others of my patients have lost a parent or even a child during the pandemic and are still grieving. So, in many ways, the pandemic continues to cause stress and anxiety in our lives. So, I want to talk about the three stages of stress. And an example of acute stress happened to one of my consulting clients, who is the executive director of a nonprofit center in Los Angeles. She came to work one day to the news that her most frequent referral source had gone on strike. It hit her that 70% of her referrals came from this source. The strike was predicted to last just a few weeks, but it lasted for over 4 months. And she had to cobble together funding to pay her overhead, her employees, etc. She had an increase in anxiety, trouble sleeping, overeating on sweets, and fatigue. And all of those can be signs of acute stress and how it affects the body. The second stage of stress is called chronic stress. An example of chronic stress is an executive, Harold Kruger, the former CEO of BMW, who collapsed during a press conference in 2015. People were understandably shocked, including his colleagues. It's been written that before he took to the stage, he said he felt ill, and someone, probably Mr. Kruger himself, decided to go ahead with the presentation anyway. The most probable explanation for his collapse is that he picked up a virus on one of the many international trips that are routine for chief executives. That combined with his inability to take the time to rest and recover may have led to his collapse. Now, on this slide and in your handouts, you can see the toll that chronic stress takes on your health, and it affects everything from your concentration to causing anxiety and depression to increasing your risk for heart problems and high blood pressure. It can affect your immune system so that you get sick more frequently, like Mr. Kruger did. It can cause hair loss, stomach upset, and can even affect your reproductive system. Now, finally, is stage three, which is burnout, the burnout stage. Another name for that is adrenal fatigue. Christina Maslach, a pioneer researcher on this subject at University of California at Berkeley, says that burnout refers to a syndrome of emotional exhaustion and cynicism that frequently occurs among people who do people work, who spend considerable time in close encounters. Ryan Caldbeck, founder and CEO of Circle Up, experienced severe burnout after years of chronic stress, professional challenges, and personal hardships. Despite being physically healthy and successful, he faced sleeplessness, depression, headaches, and blurred vision. He eventually stepped down from his CEO role, realizing that persistence alone could not overcome the toll that burnout had taken on his well being and leadership. In an article in Harvard Business Review, he stated, "It takes more than self discipline to prevent burnout. You need to rely on others." There are many examples of people in management who have experienced burnout. And one of the problems is that it's difficult to admit that you're experiencing stress or anxiety or to be vulnerable enough to share mental health struggles of any kind. There are many ways that burnout shows up, and you can see them listed on this chart. The message, though, is don't ignore stress. Identify the signs and take action, even if it means taking your lunch away from work or having a date night with your wife. Find ways to de-stress. Okay, well, there are four stages of burnout. And before we get to those four stages, let me just show you some of the behaviors that lead to burnout. Lack of sleep is one of the biggest ones, as well as poor food choices. All of them are listed here. I want to highlight perfectionism because that's one I see a lot in managers and executives. But living under constant fear, having difficulty relaxing, feeling like you're always on red alert, that's another sign that you can see of burnout. Let me tell you about the four stages, though. Starting on the left, we start with the zealot. They're my favorite. Unending enthusiasm. They always volunteer to work late. They're readily available and they feel like they're really making a difference. And I think most of us have had that experience of starting a new job or a new career. The second stage is the withdrawal stage, and that's where there's less enthusiasm. The bubble has burst, and you're beginning to complain about little things at work. You don't want to talk about work, and you begin neglecting family, friends, coworkers, and clients. The third stage, as you see, the woman in the red sweater, is the irritability stage. That's where you don't want to work. You do whatever you can to get out of taking on work, new jobs. Difficulty concentrating, you distance yourself from family and friends, and nothing just seems like it's fun anymore. And then the final stage, the most dangerous, is called the zombie stage. In this stage, hopelessness has turned to rage. You can't stand being around other people. You just want to isolate. You think everyone else is incompetent and you're the only one who knows how to do your job. You lack patience and you view others with contempt. So just think for yourself, how many of you are in one of these current stages right now? And what stage would you say you're in? Maybe you're still a zealot, which would be great. But you may also be in stage four, which is the zombie stage, and you really need a break before you burn out completely. And you can put that in the chat and see. So some people are saying, I'm stressed now. You're not alone. If any of you have other stages you want to add to the chat, please do that now. Okay, we're going to move on then. So, one of the things that's really important to note is that it's not just what's happening at work that has an effect on your mental health. There are what we call the social determinants of mental health, are the social and economic conditions that affect your mental health. And it's important to recognize that work is just one of them. So, income and employment, like if you have low income, you're unemployed, you have job insecurity, obvious impact on your mental health. The second is low education or poor or unsafe housing. Poor access to health care can also increase your risk for mental illness. Stigma and discrimination, and migration or exposure to violence, conflict, or war. So when we think about burnout, you may think, well, I'm not stressed at work. So it may be these other social determinants that are affecting your mental health. Okay, so I'm going to ask you now to do a little reflecting. So, and I will ask that you put your answers in the chat. Um, I'm going to start with the questions. I want you just to ask yourself, in the past year, has your stress level been low, moderate, or high? So just type that in. Low, moderate, or high? High is Robert is saying. Another person says high. That's, yeah. So as other people are putting, oh, we got a lot of highs here. I haven't gotten anything but highs so far. The second question you want to reflect, oh, somebody's moderate. There we go. Do you believe stress is harmful to your health? Now give me a yes or no for that. Yes, yes. Pindy says yes. Brandy. Robert, probably. Excess stress is problematic for your health, says Mark. Okay. So I want to tell you about a study that happened in the United States. And it was a study of over 30,000 adults over an 8-year period. And they were testing to see what the risk of dying is in relation to stress. So people who had high stress had I don't want to scare you, but they had a 43% risk of dying during that 8-year period of time. 43%. That's shocking. But what's even more shocking is that the lowest risk of death came from those who had high stress, but who didn't believe stress to be harmful to their health. So they had high stress, but their perception is stress was not harmful to their health. Think Navy SEALs, for example, and they have high stress training, they have high stress deployments, and yet they do not have increased consequences from this high stress. In a moment, I'll teach you a stress management technique used by elite Navy SEALs when they are under stress. So, just for a moment, imagine yourself in a stressful situation. Just you can even close your eyes and just think about something that maybe has happened recently. Maybe you were speaking at a webinar, or you may have an experience of getting yelled at by your boss or having a breakup. And notice your body sensations of stress, like high heart rate, rapid breathing, tightness in your jaw or chest. And just feel those body sensations right now. Now, let's do a flip. Instead of seeing your body sensations as a problem, recognize that your body is helping you prepare to meet a challenge. So again, just tell yourself that rapid heart rate, that tightness in your chest, that's your body helping you prepare to meet a challenge. That reframe is how people with high stress do not end up having it affect their heart or their health. Okay. So one of the biggest issues that we wanted to talk now about is how do we lower cortisol levels? Because remember, high cortisol is what causes the wear and tear on your body. So what can we do to lower those cortisol levels? So I want to start by taking you through that technique used by elite Navy SEALs that I promised. And it's called box breathing. Some of you may have heard about it. And we'll do this together. So the first part is you take an inhale to the count of 4. You hold the inhale for 4. You exhale for 4. And then hold the exhale for 4. And that makes the box. That's why they call it box breathing. So let's do that together. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Holding the in breath, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4. Holding your out breath for 4, 2, 3, 4. Now I want you to do that 2 more times on your own. Again, breathing in to the count of 4. Holding your in breath for 4. Breathing out to the count of 4. And holding the out breath for 4. Let's go one more round. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Okay. If you practice that and use it in stressful situations, you will definitely see the benefits. One of the advantages is you can do it wherever you are. You don't have to be in a certain private place. You can do it in a car. You can do it in a meeting. Wherever you are, you can use the box breathing. So the second strategy for managing stress has to do with sleep. And it's not just the amount of sleep you get, which we've been talking about for decades. Research has found that the type of sleep most apt to calm and reset the anxious, stressed brain is deep sleep. And deep sleep is non-rapid eye movement sleep. Many of you may have an Apple Watch or a Fitbit, and you may not even be using it to track your sleep. But I do recommend that, and you can then determine whether you're getting enough deep sleep. And if not, make some of the changes that we're talking about today and see if your sleep doesn't improve. Okay, the next one I'm showing you here has to do with the effect of stress on your sleep and sleep patterns and the release of cortisol. So these are the cortisol graphs, and the issue is not about cortisol, whether it's up or down. It's about the change in the natural pattern when you're under stress. So you'll see the natural, normal cortisol pattern in the blue graph, and the black line and the black dots show you that that individual fits right in to that normal pattern. When you look at the second pattern, these are people who are wired but tired. Why is that? Well, they have higher than normal cortisol during the day because they're stressed out. And then their cortisol stays high in the night. It doesn't go down like the normal pattern. These individuals will be craving chocolate or other comfort foods. They have trouble falling asleep and they have a lot of anxiety. The third pattern of cortisol is called the chronic fatigue pattern. These individuals have elevated morning cortisol levels, which boom, drop off very fast during the day. And that causes them to get that mid-afternoon slump where you feel drowsy and you have trouble even getting your energy back after exercise. And you can see that for the rest of the day, the cortisol level is at the lowest it can be. And then the final pattern is the burnout pattern. On this one, you'll see the black dots are start out low and they continue lower than normal. So the reflection of a low cortisol all during the day. The symptoms include being tired all day, irritable, having food cravings, insomnia, and exhaustion. Now, this is something that you can get measured in your saliva. So if you're having problems, this is something that you might consider. All right, let's look at another way of judging whether we're getting enough sleep. And you can use the QR code to access this chart or follow along with me and just write down your scores. And somebody said they're using an Oura ring to track their sleep, and that's one of the other devices that you can use. I want you to listen to the question now. In contrast to just feeling tired, how likely are you to doze off in the following situations? And here are the answers you can use. Would never doze off is a 0, slight chance 1, moderate chance 2, high chance 3. So how likely are you to doze off sitting and reading? And just write down your score. Watching television, sitting inactive in a public place, like a movie theater, as a passenger in a car for an hour or more without stopping for a break, lying down to rest when you can, sitting and talking to someone, sitting quietly after a meal without alcohol, in a car while stopped for a few minutes in traffic or at a light. Now add up your total score, and if you're brave enough, put it in the chat, and then I'll give you the interpretation of your score. So I'll say for those who have a score less than 8, that's normal. How many of you have a score less than 8? If you have a score of 8 to 10, that's mild sleepiness. 11 to 15 is moderate sleepiness. So I have some people with a 9 or mild, another person with mild. 11 to 15 is moderate. Now, if your score is 16 to 20, that's severe. And if your score is over 20, that's excessive sleepiness. All right, so if you're in the higher numbers, you should get that checked out by a sleep specialist because we know that insomnia is associated with a lot of chronic health problems like diabetes, weight gain, high blood pressure, and more. So it's not just an irritating thing that you can't sleep. It affects all of your health parameters, including your mental health. Okay, research shows that, as you all know, I'm sure you've been preached to about activity levels before, but this is a new research study that shows there's a clear scientific reason why exercise is important. When we exercise, our muscles put out chemicals called myokines that travel to the brain and act as an antidepressant, like your own natural antidepressant. They improve our mood, our ability to learn, and protect the brain from the negative effects of aging. And we all want that. So next time you are shy about getting some exercise, think about activating your hope molecules. All right. So these are different things you can do to relax and refresh yourself. And I'm sure many of you have seen most of these. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I would like to focus on one, which is listening to music. And I want to play you a clip of something called Marconi Union's Weightless. Weightless is the name of the piece. And it's considered to be one of the most relaxing songs ever studied. And it even has claims that it can significantly reduce anxiety levels up to 65% due to its carefully crafted composition. So let's take a listen. You can do some of the breathing that we talked about earlier while you're listening, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just notice if your body starts to relax, if your mind starts to clear, not be so busy. Okay, so that's Marconi Union's waitlist. I want to talk a little bit more now about workplace culture, and there are some statistics that show how important it is to feel valued and accepted at your workplace. And surprisingly, 40% of employees say they feel isolated at work, even when they're surrounded by other people. And you can see here the advantages of 75% reduction in sick days, 50% drop in turnover risk, which saves companies lots of money. 5 times more likely to stick around, 9 times more likely to feel that they're being treated equitably, and 3 times more likely to say their workplace is fun and that they look forward to coming to work. Employees who rate their workplace higher on belonging tend to feel better about their jobs and work more cooperatively. There's better engagement, and employees are more committed to their task and to their organization. So one of this, you'll see a QR code here, which will offer you a reference for this chart. Workplace belonging refers to that sense of connection and acceptance that employees feel within a work environment. It involves being valued, respected, and included, while also being able to participate and contribute to an organization. Belonging is one of the 5 essential workplace qualities that ensure good psychological health and well-being of employees. So you can see the 5 essential qualities. One is protection from harm, and that involves safety and security, and that includes psychological safety. The second is connection and community, which involves social support and belonging. Work-life harmony, which is enhanced by having some autonomy about when and how much you work, or having flexibility, like working virtually, etc. And then mattering at work, which requires dignity and meaning. And finally, opportunity for growth through learning and accomplishments. So, a study of 100,000 workers in multiple countries found that employee depression, stress, and anxiety of mental accounted for 83% of mental health cases in employee assistance programs. So, here are 5 actions leaders can take to build a workplace culture of resilience. The first is to create psychological safety, create and model it. And that involves having clear communication channels and respecting confidentiality. The second is offering flexibility in work arrangements, remote work, flexible hours, job sharing, and this will help reduce stress and gives people more control over their environment. The third is prioritizing belonging and having compassion. So this increases happiness and decreases stress. And again, it should be modeled by leaders. And finally, providing mental health resources like EAP or virtual mental health providers, for example. So I've given you a QR code here where you can download this resilience quiz. Now, many people think, well, if I wasn't born with resilience, then it's too late. But that's not true. You don't have to be born with it. You can learn resilience. And resilience for adults requires accepting what happened to you, whatever that is, whether it's a divorce or your parents' separation or divorce or other things that may have even been more severe. But at some point, you have to come to acceptance because that will make you stronger. The second is getting connected to a stronger support system, finding meaning, learning from your experiences, and taking good care of yourself. Not just getting a massage, which is wonderful, by the way, but doing things outside of work that you enjoy, taking care of your body. Practice some of the stress and relaxation techniques that we're talking about today. So, the next thing I want to do before we end is to take you on a little guided meditation. And I'll ask that you, if you can, close your eyes, put your feet flat on the ground, and just relax your arms and your hands in your lap. And I will be playing some music. And I ask that you repeat what I'm saying, repeat silently to yourself. So, may I be safe. I'm sorry, let me start again. I don't think you can hear it. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer dangers. May I be well in body and mind. May I be at peace and happy. Let's repeat again. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer dangers. May I be well in body and mind. And may I be at peace and happy. And for the final time, focus your blessing on someone you care about and say, may they be filled with loving kindness. May they be safe from inner and outer dangers. May they be well in body and mind. And may they be at peace and happy. And taking a deep breath, bring yourself back to the room. Feel the chair beneath you, your feet on the floor. And gently open your eyes when you're ready. Thanks for doing that with me. I hope that was helpful. In your handouts, you will see a worksheet of suggested mindfulness activities to help you manage stress. You can also use the QR code here to download that. Well, I've enjoyed doing this webinar with you today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Adam for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dr. Ross. I'm in that meditative state thanks to you. It really felt quite good, and as much as it felt good for me in that moment, thinking about it for myself, I was thinking about some friends that are having some challenges physically and even mentally at the moment, and
Yeah,
so that was very powerful to send be thinking
blessings.
in that
Yeah,
way, sending
yeah.
that blessing. Yeah, so thank you so much. I know we had a couple of questions that came in, so if we've got time, and I think we just do, I'm going to ask them of you now. So the first question that came in was, what strategies can individuals use to maintain a healthy work-life balance when faced with demanding work schedules and expectations?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest um, problem we struggle with in America. In other countries, they have built-in systems for work-life balance, but here, everybody has high expectations that we work long hours and overwork. So I think part of it is putting in those self-care strategies and having a ritual that you do every single day or at least several times a week so that your body doesn't get behind. Making sure that you have enough sleep, making sure that you're getting deep sleep, using some of the mindfulness techniques and doing that on a daily basis, like, a short meditation before you go to work and then something that you would do afterward, whether it be activity or, swimming or being with friends. So we really have to try hard in this country to have work-life balance, but it's important.
Yes. Um, Another question was, how can organizations effectively implement stress management programs without adding extra workload or responsibilities to employees? How
I know.
do you do
Well,
that?
yeah, I think the main shift needs to be for the corporations to begin to treat their employees' health and also their mental health the same way they treat shareholder profits. That may be too much to ask, but I think if you want to create that, you have to really, again, set some structures, and that means accurately, measuring your employees' well-being and then putting into play some breaks during the day or some training and meditation. Or I think Oprah was one of the ones early who had like a 5-minute meditation at the beginning of every day that went to all of her employees. So I think it's important that we have that kind of workplace culture. And it has helped that many companies are now doing remote work, which can also make it a little easier for people to put into place some of the mindfulness techniques.
Yeah, that might actually sort of lead into the other question that was posed, which is, how can flexible work schedules improve employee productivity? And I think you were just sort of leaning into that a little bit there.
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing for me, because I am on a flexible work schedule myself, and um, I really have found it helpful for my well-being and my health in general. But a study has shown that while office employees reported more time in their workday, due to fewer distractions. So that's one of the ways. So you get more work done because you're not being distracted by your neighbor or somebody gossiping about something. It also enables employees to better manage their obligations and their work responsibilities. It can reduce stress and improve work-life balance and lead to higher job satisfaction. So I think for many people, it's been a real boon to be able to have more flexibility. However, there are some people who really need that structure and, that social interaction. So it's not for everybody, but
Yeah,
it's opportunity.
I was just thinking that, the flexible work schedules have been a benefit to a lot of folks. I also, and I want to ask you about this just personally, it seems that there's an increase in loneliness. I think people are feeling that, and
Oh, yeah.
lack of connection or loss of connection
Mhm.
is a bigger deal than maybe we're even aware of. I certainly love to have a flexible schedule. I always have. Feels like freedom to me to be able to go as I, go along my day as I choose. But to not have other people around and to be able to connect with them, I think uh, is creating a toll on us mentally, emotionally. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. For example, there are more single women who don't have spouses who are older, getting older, than ever before. And I think there are, a lot of people who don't have family nearby as we used to, and when we didn't move away so much. And so I think loneliness is a big issue, and I have my patients talk about that a lot. So I just suggest, for example, for myself, just going to a coffee shop to do some of my work, just so I'm speaking to someone during the day, not being completely alone,
Right.
or joining a group who likes to walk along the beach or things like that. So I joined a book club, which I swore I would never ever do, but I'm really finding it very happy. It makes me happy to be around a group of people and talking about a book that I like and, sharing a meal. So I think you just have to find other opportunities so that you don't get lost in the loneliness.
Yeah, it reminds me of some old research, but good research. Not all old things are not relevant or not cutting edge, right? So
Yeah.
this research was about what's called weak ties, the weak tie connections, which are, like you say, the connections that are not the deep ones or the strong ones, the ones with our family and friends and people we've known our whole lives, or our intimate partners in life and the like. But the people you meet at the supermarket, the people you meet, in a salon if you have hair to cut, or you know,
Yes,
like you say, people
exactly.
you meet in a book club, and those kind of weak tie connections are really fundamentally important to us. So that's something that we can do, and ultimately make a choice to, as you say, just because we're working in a flexible way or remote way, sometimes there still are opportunities to be able to connect to people, even if it's not directly
Even
related.
if it's just your local barista.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, phenomenal. So I want to just remind everybody that if you'd love to have Carolyn come and speak to your audience, to your team, leadership team, or at an event that you're creating, I think this is a really relevant topic, more relevant today than I would have ever imagined it would be. Of course, Dr. Ross has been doing this a minute, so it's no surprise to her, I'm sure. But if you'd like to find out more about her and her topics and the things that she speaks on and can speak on, and find out more, of course, about what WorkWell Labs does, please use this QR code or the URL that's there for you. For now, anyway, I want to keep us in under the 50-minute mark, just under the 50-minute mark, so you have time to take a bio break, take a walk before you get on to doing the next thing in your day. For now, anyway, I just want to say thank you so much to our community. Thank you, Carolyn, for showing up and sharing your
Thank
view.
you, Adam, for having me.
Yes. Bye, everyone.